Hello and welcome to another edition of Scott Nagle's Tennis Tips. I am Scott Nagle, bringing you a tip today from the Kia Palazzo Hotel, where they just hosted the 2015 ITF World Coaches Conference here in Antalya, Turkey. Today's tennis tip is going to be covering the heavy backspin drop shot, even the drop shot that lands on your opponent's side of the court and bounces back over to your side of the court. Let's have a look at that now. As you can see, there are several examples where the ball lands on the opponent's side of the court and then moves backwards towards the net, and even a few times where it bounces on my opponent's side and then bounces over to my side of the net. Let's take a moment to look at the rule for both you and your opponent for when that does happen. So addressing the rule for when the ball lands in your opponent's side of the court and then bounces back, let's take a look at what happens for the player that hits the shot. So if I've played the ball on your side of the court, it bounces back over to my side of the court, I get out of the way, the opponent doesn't touch the ball, it becomes my point. The opponent fails to return the ball back over the net. Even though it's come back over the net, they've not helped it come back over the net, so the point becomes mine. If the opponent is able to run up to the net, they're able to touch the ball prior to it going over the net, or they can even reach onto my side of the court and touch the ball. All they have to do is strike the ball into the court and the point continues. So, for example, the opponent runs up to the net, the ball is bouncing back over. They could strike it and put it out of reach for me off to the side, or they might hit it back into the court where I could make another shot. The point would continue. The opponent must be careful not to reach over, as well as touch the net with any part of their clothing or their body or with their racket. They have to reach over and be completely void of touching the net with any part of their body or racket. Strategically, there's a few times I'm going to use the heavy backspin drop shot. I might first consider the score, since this shot can be quite risky. If the score is very close, it's a point I can't lose, I might opt for a more safe drop shot or another play altogether. However, if I'm winning or losing by a great margin, that's a good time to practice this shot in a match. The other things I might consider are where my opponent is, their ability to move to the ball, and also if they like coming to the net or if they do not like coming to the net. So this shot will surely bring your opponent towards the net. If they're not strong in the net, it's a good tactic to use. Since the ball that lands on the opponent's side of the court and bounces back over is also a high risk shot, I want to use it pretty sparingly throughout the match, at least going for that complete backspin over the net. With this drop shot, the heavy backspin drop shot, it's a very specialized shot. The first thing I'm going to think about with the technique is where I am on the court. I need to make sure that I'm somewhere between the service line and the net before I practice this shot in a match. Doing it from the baseline is possible, however, the percentage of risk goes way up. The technique for this shot is very similar to the drop shot volley and the basic drop shot, which are covered in some of my other tips at Scott Nagle Tennis. This shot is going to be an increase in your backspin, so we're going to be looking to flatten the racket face out a little bit more as we're coming underneath the ball. So we take a look at the technique on this shot. The racket will start above your ball as you come down, and then underneath the ball we're going to open up that string bed. We're looking to really make sure that you get a lot of speed coming underneath that ball. At the same time, you're going to loosen your arm up a little bit so the ball doesn't travel too far. And then one of the final keys is to make sure that there is a follow through at the end of this shot. A lot of players will hit that drop shot and just stop the racket. We want to make sure we're increasing the backspin, that we're accelerating underneath the ball with a follow through that's coming back up. The key is the racket angle for the extreme backspin, however. Any angle where I'm hitting a more normal drop shot angle here and then coming underneath the last minute will produce normal backspin. This aggressive, heavy backspin is going to be needed to have the racket bed wide open here, totally towards the sky. Other techniques that might help you develop this extreme backspin drop shot are to move your hand up the racket handle. This will help you reduce the speed of the racket or the power that you're hitting on your shot. You still want a lot of racket head speed, but we don't want a lot of depth. The other thing you could consider is adjusting your grip. So on the backhand extreme drop shot, you'll actually move your grip over towards the forehand, which will open the racket bed up a bit more. And on the forehand side, you'll adjust your grip even more towards your backhand to help you open the racket head more. Once you become comfortable with the adjusted grip and moving your hand up the racket to getting the racket bed flat, you can then start moving your hand down the racket handle and going back to the Continental Grip. It's still not a bad idea when going for the extreme backspin that you can adjust your grip before you hit any of these shots. Not only do I want to consider where I am on the court, but the type of shot I'm dealing with. For the extreme backspin drop shot, it's a little bit easier when I'm in position. It's not impossible when I'm really stretched for the ball, but you'll see in these two examples, it's a bit easier for me to produce the backspin I'm looking for with a ball that's easier to hit. Stay tuned for more tips from Nagle Tennis, and we'll see you on the court.
Cut it.